Good morning. Today we're just working on the BMW F650 water pump change. The seals on these things can be one of the trouble spots for this bike. I don't know if I want to call it trouble spot, but because these Rotax engines are basically bulletproof, but the water pump seals tend to. They can go bad after a while. Let's just put it that way. And here's the shaft itself, and I kind of reassembled it so you guys could take a look at what's going on here. There's a roll pin in here that goes in there. There's a little hole in that roll pin, and to remove the outer impeller, you have to drive that roll pin out with a small punch, which is no big deal. And then they've got two seals on here. One is sealing the antifreeze from leaking, and the other seal that goes towards the engine is so you're not leaking oil. Now, one of the things on here that somebody had been in here before me and had one of the seals in backwards. And you can see that the seals have a spring on there that puts tension on the shaft. Well, the spring is supposed to go towards whatever fluid you're trying to keep inside the motor, whether it be antifreeze or oil. So when this shaft goes into this, you obviously are going to insert the shaft from the other side. The seal for the antifreeze should be facing the spring load. The spring on the seal should be facing outward here because this is the inside of the water pump. So you're trying to seal out water from getting to the engine. So the seal on the outer seal would have the spring facing out. Now, the other side, of course, is the oil side. And the same thing there. You want the spring facing towards the oil side so you know oil doesn't leak in there and get out. Now, somebody had this oil seal reversed, and so it wasn't huge. I mean, it's surprising because it did really work for some time. And but they do, if it does start to leak either antifreeze or oil, they have a weep hole here on the bottom. And so there's a gap in between these seals. So, when you drive the oil seal into the bottom, very carefully with a socket or something with this diameter. And then the other seal you don't want to drive in all the way because you don't want to plug up the hole that is there specifically to drain either antifreeze or oil if one of the seals fails. And that gives you, and it'll come out here. I was getting a couple of drops of oil here and there, and, a lot of people just say run it, which, whatever, it's fine. But you can see I've cleaned this up, but, oil was coming out there. And now, on this happened to be an eBay kit, and the only reason I'm mentioning it is because, right off the bat, I got this, and it's hard to see, but the shaft is nicked, right? Which is not unusual for, in my experience, for stuff that you get aftermarket, unfortunately. And the shaft was a couple of thousandths undersized from the original BMW part, which doesn't really help. Obviously that's not as good for a sealing on the. Let me turn this other light on here. As the original part, because the shaft is a little smaller, and then you don't get as much tension on the seal. Now, in the kit, you may get a kit. You can buy them. You can buy all of this stuff online at Max BMW. They've got an excellent system for buying parts, and in some cases, OEM is the best way to go. In fact, I'm not going to use this aftermarket shaft. The seals seem fine. The brown seal is important. The brown seal is for the oil side. The black seal is for the antifreeze side. We can back up here in a minute. And, so the gas tank, you got to remove the gas tank, which is pretty easy. One bolt here. It's got a couple of vent tubes that you've got to disconnect. Very easy. There's one on the other side. And just one bolt, disconnect the two vent tubes. Now, it's a lot easier to do if you don't have much gas in the tank. There's one, the bolt just goes in here. Here's the vent tube for one side, and we can run around. Very easy to disconnect. And here's the other tube, vent and overflow tubes. So you're removing the gas tank first. You're pulling the side covers off, which is just a bunch of Allen head bolts. And, I just use a fuel line clamp on the fuel line and zip tie all this stuff out of your way, because when you go to reassemble it, it's just nice to have everything out of the way. Now, one of the things that you might notice here is the starter is actually bolted to this cover. So if you get all the cover bolts out and you can't figure out why it's not coming off, it's, the starter is bolted to it. And one caution I would give you there is, once you get everything assembled with your water pump and everything, you're putting the cover back on, you're going to want to tighten the cover bolts first, obviously even with a new gasket, before you tighten up the starter bolts. Because if you get the cover in place, put the starter bolts in, the cover has got to evenly seal all around its outside surface. So you want to torque those first, then put your starter bolts in, so you're not causing some kind of interruption in the way the cover seats. When I take the bolts out, I do it in a clockwise manner, and I just line them up because they are different lengths. So I started here. It's just convenient. I call it 12 o'clock. Then I work my way around and, crack them all first. So you're not, don't loosen. You want to loosen them evenly. But so, if you lay them out in order that you took them out, it's just a lot easier. You don't have to try and figure out what links go where. Now, this one has a copper washer on it, and it was in the wrong place. Somebody had taken this apart and reassembled it with this in the wrong position. And the drain for your antifreeze is this bottom bolt here. And so the cover obviously goes on there like that. And this copper washer is supposed to go here, and because that's how you drain it. Somebody had put this in somewhere else and used one of the others in there, and amazingly it wasn't leaking. But don't do that. Now I've ordered new crush washers here, so just make sure you're getting that in the right place. You're going to need a new crush washer on that. And if you got the cover off, you might as well replace the shaft oil seal. It's just, it's there. You have the cover off. You can do the same if you want to the clutch actuation shaft if you want. There's a seal here as well on that. You disconnect your oil, your antifreeze lines here. Now, these original clamps, you can see these steel clamps are a one-time use clamp. And, I found the easiest way to get those off is to just take your Dremel tool and just that high edge there, just take that down. Just grind that off. Doesn't take very long. And boom, that comes off. Rather than trying to pry it off with pliers or whatever you might find that You just take a Dremel, take that edge off, and these will come right out. Now, something that I just saw today, I took it apart yesterday, and so I can make sure I ordered enough parts. Now, this is a little disturbing here because, as you can see, this line has been rubbing on the gas tank, and I'm glad I noticed it because it is the oil return line that comes from the lower crankcase. Now, this is it's a dry sump, so the oil is in the frame, and the dry sump system. In other words, the crankshaft. If you don't, a lot of engines have a wet sump where the oil is in the crankcase, the lower crankcase of the motor, and it's not kept in the frame like it is on this. But the advantage there is that the crankshaft and all the moving parts are not trying to splash their way through, 3 quarts of oil. So basically it reduces friction and it revs easier. So I mean, it has its advantages there, but I will have to definitely replace that line. I'm glad I saw that, because obviously you'd be going down the road and have a giant oil leak. So that's another good thing there. But it's not a terrible job. Remove the gas tank, remove the side panels. Pull your cover, mark your, if you want. I just sometimes make little notes on there. Here's the starter. Here's the pump. Bolts, and so just take a look at that. Now, another thing here is, before you got to remove the clutch actuation arm, and what I would suggest is you mark it before you take it off. Mark it. That'll give you something to go by when you're putting the splines back on the shaft. Now, I marked it. Mark the shaft. Mark the part that you have to put back on there, and it just makes it, it's just a little easier to line things up. You get your shifter back. Here, I do it on the shifter too. That way you've got, it's lined up the way it was. It's just one of those quick little easy tricks. You get it apart, and then you're like, oh shit, I don't know, exactly where I had it. I may actually get rid of this kickstand switch. It's kind of annoying. Every time you put the kickstand down, the bike shuts off, and you don't always want that. You may have just something quick you want to do, and restarting it every time is not convenient. But it's one of those safety things that they do. It's whatever. So new gaskets. New gasket here. Obviously, I'll put new clamps on here, and I've ordered the new seals and shaft and everything from BMW, and obviously I'm gonna have to I'll have to order one of these oil lines here. But anyway, that's not a big deal. It's pretty easy to get to there, fortunately. And I think one thing to note here is that if you don't use silicate and nitrate, trying to hold on the phone here, my hand's shaking a little. If you don't use silicate and nitrate-free antifreeze in there, it will cause friction on the shaft. And that's a lot of times why these fail, is because the shaft actually starts to get a groove in it. And you can kind of see it there. And it will wear down to a point where it's not sealing anymore. And so, silicate and nitrate-free has less friction, and it doesn't wear down that shaft. So don't just dump any kind of antifreeze in there. Make sure you've got silicate and nitrate-free oil in there. And so, yeah, there you go. I mean, it's not terrible. And as long as you just take your time, lay your parts out where you think where they go. Of course, your clutch is right here. If you got issues with your clutch, that would be the time to take care of it, but there's no problem with that. So anyway, when I got the new parts, they'll come in a few days, and we'll get it back together and then have another little video on it. So hope everybody's having a good day. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, talk to you later.